All right, let's go. So big show today, Connor.
Yeah, loaded.
Me and you. So we're gonna break down this Monday Night Football game quickly. There's not a lot really to get into, and then we will talk about waivers.
Yeah.
We got Week 4 waivers to get to. A lot of big name injuries. Who you should bid on, who you should make claims to, who you can ignore. We'll get into all that. But why don't we start off on Monday night?
Yeah, let's start right there with CeeDee Lamb, the redeem game for CeeDee Lamb after the big drop. And then obviously, a brutal drop, wide open.
How do you do this? So for those of you watching on Peacock, you see, right, here comes CeeDee Lamb. We're watching the video right now, literally in his hands, in his bread basket. This is he had to move up, he had to gain speed a little bit, but you see him there. He's tapping his chest this one's on me. But he's smiling, but it's my fault. But then, he makes the clutch fourth down grab to move the chains there when the Cowboys went for it. And then just on a fade, just a ridiculous one-handed catch in motion, both feet down. CeeDee Lamb, unbelievable, seals the game for the Cowboys here. Ultimately ends up the night with 8 receptions, 87 yards, a touchdown on 12 targets. And to me, that's the biggest key here. We talked about this throughout when Dak Prescott went down. What do you do with CeeDee Lamb? And the answer was nothing. He's still the focal point of this passing offense. He's still the guy that's going to get a ton of work. My expectation here is that Cooper Rush is under center next week. But Dak Prescott on Twitter, actually, Jane Ashley Slater, who does a real good job of covering the Cowboys, Jane getting a quote from Dak Prescott saying that, hey, he thinks Week 5 against the Rams, he might be able to come back. That's a game. He's not ruling out a Week 4 return, but there's a chance. It looks like a better than average chance that he comes back in Week 5. You saw some preseason footage of him gripping a football already. Either way, whether it's Dak Prescott or Cooper Rush under center, CeeDee Lamb is who you drafted in B, which is the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy.
That's the relief here, Matthew, is that Cooper Rush is out there, and you could still trust CeeDee Lamb. He's getting a ton of targets. The offense is absolutely running through him, at least the offense through the air. And Cooper Rush, while he is being a classic game-managing quarterback, all of his big throwing attempts seem to be going CeeDee's way. So that gives you a lot of comfort in this situation.
Yeah, so far through the season, he's wide receiver 23, but obviously wide receiver 6 this week in week number 3. So, he's been more of a wide receiver 2 than the wide receiver 1 you drafted him for, but they play the Commanders on Sunday, and everybody scores on the Commanders. So no fear at all if you are a CeeDee Lamb manager. Continuing good days are ahead for you. To me, the other story is, and I want to credit, by the way, I want to take one moment here very quickly to credit Coach Jason Garrett. Coach Garrett was a guest on Fantasy Football pregame 2 weeks ago, before Cooper Rush's first start, and we were all like, what are we going to do? Is the sky falling here in Dallas? And Coach Garrett was very clear. Hey, we liked Cooper Rush in Dallas quite a bit. He's not a flashy name. He's not a big guy named Guy. Didn't come out of college with a lot of pedigree. But I will tell you, he works his butt off. He knows the offense. He can execute that system. Cowboys are going to be just fine. And Coach Garrett was right. Fantasy-wise, he was right. And by the way, real life right. Cowboys 2-0 under Cooper Rush. So credit to Coach Garrett right there. Running backs, I think, are interesting here, Connor. Right? Because Tony Pollard's, I think, suddenly useful.
You were saying it off the air that you can trust him in the flex spot, right? I think that's the most important thing with Tony Pollard, because you know what Zeke is going to be drafted to do. He's going to be a star, set him in your lineup every week at running back. You like his floor. But Tony Pollard, I feel like, is more of the ceiling guy, right? He needs that big play to thrive. But, Matthew, we're seeing the big plays from Tony Pollard, the explosiveness behind this offensive line.
Had a 46-yard rush in this one on his way to a 13-for-105 day on the ground. The concern here is, and I don't know if that's a big one, but the concern here is that in a game in which Michael Gallup did not play again, and a game in which Dalton Schultz was not active, Tony Pollard got 1 target. We had this whole expectation coming into the season that, he's going to be used in the passing game. And week 1, I went on Football Night in America. I said, give me the over on 20 receiving yards for Tony Pollard, and didn't come close. That was mind-boggling to me. So they aren't using him in the passing game. They're literally just using basically a two-headed rushing attack here. When they get in close, they prefer Ezekiel Elliott. You saw that Zeke came in on the 4th downs. They prefer him in pass pro, Zeke as well. So he's going to get a lot of the early down work. He's going to get the close-in stuff, and, of course, he's the one that cashes in the touchdown. But I think this is right. Tony Pollard, 13-for-105. Ezekiel Elliott, 15-for-73 and a touchdown. Zeke catches 1 ball for 2 yards. Pollard gets no targets as well. If those two guys are going to be basically even touch splits, right? It's going to be an even split in terms of the touches between these guys, which is what it's looking like right now. Now, it's worth noting, Zeke played 41 snaps, Pollard played only 28. Again, they prefer Zeke in pass protection, but Pollard has that big play ability. I think Ezekiel Elliott is a solid RB2. You mentioned the floor. I think that's right. There's much more floor than upside with Zeke. I think he's in running back 2 where you're really hoping for a score. But I think by the end of the year, he has double-digit touchdowns. Tony Pollard is usable as a flex. For the season, Tony Pollard is the 25th best running back in fantasy. He was running back 28 in week 3. And I think that's right. So I think somebody that was drafted as an insurance back for Ezekiel Elliott, he certainly has value there. But he is a viable flex play moving forward.
I think the most disappointing thing about Pollard and what's been a good year for him, he's only been lined up in the slot or out wide just 20 times through 3 weeks. I feel like we got sucked into the talk or got excited about the talk of Zeke and Pollard on the field together, and we're just not seeing a lot of that right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So, I mean, again, maybe there's less upside with Pollard. As long as Ezekiel Elliott's healthy, the upside on Tony Pollard is always going to be limited, especially if they're just not using him in the passing game. That may change once Dak Prescott comes back.
Yeah.
They may feel like
Gallup.
The Gallup. Maybe once Dak is back, and they certainly care about pass protection, but maybe Dak, who's a little bit more mobile, probably a little bit more experienced at seeing blitzes, at seeing some of the different coverages that might come this way. Maybe they open up the playbook. Maybe they're trying to be more conservative here. Again, with no Schultz, no Gallup. But the fact that he just hasn't been targeted that much. Through the first 3 weeks, he's gotten 10 targets. 10 targets in 3 weeks, right? You know what I mean? Like,
with a backup quarterback, you think the backup quarterback is going to
You would dump it off a little bit, right?
Yeah, but looking at the Giants side of things and sticking with the backfield here, Saquon Barkley, incredible comeback year so far. He's been the guy we've always hoped for and expected. 22.6 fantasy points per game through the 3 weeks. RB1, another big week with about 23 points.
He is the best running back in fantasy right now.
It's easy to say.
I mean, like, that's not hyperbole. That's literally what he is. He is, through 3 weeks, he is the number 1 running back in fantasy. Worth noting, by the way, he was the most bet player to score the first touchdown on BetMGM at plus 600. He's the first guy getting in the end zone. Nice job.
Big hit for the public.
What?
Big hit for the public.
Big hit for the public.
You love to see that.
Listen, we're all about trying to take as much money from BetMGM as we can. Nice job on the public there. I mean, there's nothing else to say other than Saquon. But other than this, is that the only takeaway I can say is that if you drafted Saquon Barkley, A, good for you, and more importantly, that don't trade him. Like, for anyone that might think like I want to sell high or anything like that, I would not do that. This is legit. He is a locked-in RB1 for the rest of the year. I don't think there's anything much else to talk about here with the Giants' offense. Tough news as literally just got an alert from the Fantasy Life app. This is per Pat Leonard, who covers the team for the New York Daily News. Pat tweeting out, Sterling Shepard tore his left ACL. His season is over, per Brian Daboll, #Giants. So awful to see, tough injury. We like Sterling. We wish him a speedy recovery. But unfortunately, we are a fantasy football show, and when there's news in the world of the NFL, there's a fantasy reaction to that. So while we are not, while we certainly wish Sterling the best, the fact of the matter is that a leading receiver for the Giants is out for the year. That means there's a fantasy impact to that, and the fantasy impact of that is like, I think the Giants receiver you'd want to pick up to replace Sterling Shepard hasn't played yet this year. I think it's Wan'Dale Robinson, if anyone. Right? I mean, it's not a good offense. It's not a good offense. It's a low, conservative offense. It runs through Saquon Barkley. But if you're looking to the waiver wire, Wan'Dale Robinson to me is the most interesting guy.
He is, because there's a lot of hope with Wan'Dale. They invested a second-round pick in him. The staff really, really likes him. They can get creative with the usage of him. And here's the other side of it, Matthew. Galladay, the staff does not like him, and when they put him on the field, he's ineffective with that awful drop. Kadarius Toney can basically never practice, which is a huge problem. So you have to find somebody, go with the guy that this regime believes in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he had the one catch for 5 yards. He leads the first game early of the season, hasn't played, didn't play in week 2 or week 3. We hope he comes back soon. It isn't right. It is a new regime in New York. They drafted Wan'Dale in the second round. They like him. There's a lot of buzz for him in the preseason. So I'm still holding up hope there. But otherwise, just feels like, Richie James, David Sills. Like, Kadarius Toney. You know, it's interesting. we had Mike Florio on Fantasy Football Pregame, of course, from Pro Football Talk. And one of the things he mentioned about Cole Beasley going to the Buccaneers, well, he talked about the fact that he was signed to the practice squad with the Buccaneers. Beasley really wanted to play with Tom Brady. He goes back to the practice squad. Could the Giants, his former coach and Brian Daboll, obviously offensive coordinator in Buffalo, like there's been interest there. Could they say, like, listen, Cole, what's it going to take to get you here and play the slot for us? Because they're 2-1. Giants are 2-1, and they're in the thick of it. They've just lost Sterling Shepard. Might be interesting to see if there's a reunion there with Beasley in New York. At the moment, he's currently in Tampa Bay. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay? Respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.